Welcome to the DWRD Net Stationery feed with your host, Derek DeWeese. This is a podcast where we talk about all things stationery, be it fountain pens, pencils, typewriters, papers, and more. So sit back and relax and enjoy this week's episode. Welcome. We're up to episode 5 for season 2 of the DWRD Net Stationery feed. And today I am excited to welcome Rob Sanchez of Rob's Penworks. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
No, I've been excited to talk to Rob because as I've gotten into the pen making journey, Rob has been helpful in answering all my loads of questions on equipment and tools and whatnot. So it's been very helpful. So it's kind of nice to talk on a more official capacity, not through Instagram group chats, but that's been really helpful. So let's go on and get started with kind of the level setting questions. Let's get started with the first one of what got you into the pens and stationery hobby to begin with?
Yeah, about 10 years ago, Memorial Day weekend, my neighbor helped me make my first pen kit. It was one of the Cuban style kit pens, a little bit on the fatter side, a little on the heavier side. By the time that weekend was over, I told my wife I wanted to get my own lathe, and we drove down to Rockler and we bought a lathe, brought it home, and I had started making kit pens. So that was 10 years ago.
Wow, that's crazy. And I've kind of did the same just in, doing this show and interviewing other makers. I was like, that sounds like it'd be kind of fun. So, you kind of, once that seed is planted, I think there's no stopping going from there. But so what have you got inked? What have you been writing with lately?
Yeah. So went to the California Pen Show, picked up a new pen from CY. Give me a second. Let me break it out. It's the Mokum Gane.
Very cool.
So this is one of the x-acto pens that's run by CY formerly Tokyo Station Pens, right? But now he's primarily all in on x-acto. But yeah, and then it's loaded with Momo, which is Japanese for peach, but ironically it's pink. It's a Tassia ink, and it's got a Naginata style grind on it.
Who did the grind?
CY personally did the grind on this one. Yeah.
Very neat.
And same for its titanium brother. This was from last year when I visited him in Japan. I picked that up.
Very cool. Yeah, I've seen those on the list, and I'll break down and seek one out, but especially the titanium. I have a weakness for titanium. But so you talked about, those of what you have inked in general. What kind of inks do you prefer? Do you stick with the standard inks, or do you like to try new ones as you come across them?
So I'm limited on space as a maker because all the space I have is currently being taken up by blanks, nibs, converters, packaging. So I have one drawer and one drawer only, and the majority of the inks in there are Pilot. Half of them are Pilot. I love Pilot. And then the other half are really bright, random inks that I've picked up as I've been traveling through Japan. So there's a lot of pinks. There's a few purples and some reds and some oranges. As I've gotten older, especially when I'm practicing, I find that the brighter colors you can see in low light conditions. And so I used to be all about a dark blue or a turquoise. But in low lighting, it can be hard to see. So the brighter the color, the better. And I can write and I can read what I'm writing, even if the lighting's not perfect.
I'm kind of curious if that's a thing, because I've been similar. As I've progressed and gotten into the hobby and older, I'm more open and I'm using more colorful inks than I would have in the past. I was very dark color, occasional like oxblood or something, but blacks, blue blacks. And now it's like, give me the orange, give me the bright greens,
Yeah.
So I guess that's something that's kind of common as we get older for whatever reason. Being able to see it is obviously very helpful.
Yeah.
Now you said,
go
ahead.
Stacy of Paper wants a pen. He's known for refurbishing Schaefer's. He's a big guy all about the orange ink, and you can't hang out with him and not pick up an orange. So I would say he was probably the biggest influence early on of getting me to try brighter colors.
Yeah, I think my gateway was, kind of getting back into the hobby. My wife and I went to New York City, and I picked up Sailor Tea Time, which is kind of a darker orange, but then that kind of progressed, and now that she's in the hobby more, we own a lot more colorful inks. So there's more on the shelf to be able to choose from, but no, that's definitely a natural progression. But you said when you go to Japan, now the ones you pick up, do you try and find store exclusive stuff you're not going to find in the States when you're on that side looking for inks?
Yeah, so, um, because I'm going for work, I'm going to some oddball places that are normally off the beaten path. So, like, Niigata, is one of them, and Niigata has a pen store that carries exclusive inks that can only be found there, and so I have picked up a few and pen-abled or ink-able and ink muled over some bottles for some friends because they want to try new stuff, and all each one has a different story that's related to like the local area, and they're inspired by scenes that you see out in nature. So the colors directly are named for visual scenes like waterfall mist or the gold mine or a bunch of other different names. But the gold mine and waterfall mist come to mind because those are actually some of the inks that I brought back for people to try.
No, that's very neat. I just did a video on one of the new Asvine pens, and I was using a Japan
Mm.
exclusive ink that Lisa Vaness brought me as a gift when she was there for her Tokyo Pen Show slash tour around Japan with Matthew Chin. So
Yeah,
I like those exclusives. And then a couple of, the first guest, Nick, of this season, he had just come back from traveling Japan, and that was what he was on the hunt for, the exclusive store inks that you're not going to find unless you're in that store. They're not selling online. You have to walk in there, pick it up, purchase it, and then leave with it. So that's just neat finding those little hidden treasures, where you can combine that with travel, even if you're there for work. A nice little
yeah,
side perk of, that kind of um, trip.
yeah. My translators know, like they've already told me they have 2 nights where we're swinging by the Niigata stationery store. Um, and I'm like, why two? We only need one. They're like, we already know. We already know. You're gonna go and you're gonna second guess what you didn't buy, and we're gonna go back and we're gonna buy it again. So it's like we'll plan for 2 nights. Okay, sounds great.
They're just going to have you set a cart aside that's sitting by the counter. So when you go back in, it's like, here's all the stuff you were waffling on. Let's go and pick
Yeah,
that up and we can go into our schedule.
yeah,
So what
yeah,
about
exactly.
papers? Obviously with traveling to Japan, I'm sure you have a nice assortment of unique papers, but what do you like to write on?
So I really love the Yamamoto paper that is now discontinued. So thankfully at the SF Pen Show, the guys came out and had a stack of these. So I picked up 5 of them. So I was stash of 5. And then recently, um, I was able to pick up the Yamamoto paper Canopus Note, which just launched recently. This sold out at San Francisco last year within the first day, and I went over second day, and they were already gone. So, picked up a couple from the California Pen Show last week, I think it was, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to try this out. I'm a big fan of the A5 because they tend to fit in a small zippered pouch, which makes it easy to carry. And you can throw a couple of them in here along with your pencils. And I primarily have pencils uh, that I use for that notebook. And my fountain pens tend to stay either at my desk at work or at home.
No, I'm a big fan of Canopus, and you're going to love Pencil. Pencil on Canopus is wonderful because it's got a little bit of tooth to the paper. So I actually
Yeah.
have a couple of those A5s and then some of the Yamamoto Jotter size, the smaller
Hmm.
tablets. And I use the Canopus, a big fan. That and Graphilo has been a recent one I've added in, and really loving the new formula of the Graphilo. So aside from that, have you always been a Japanese paper user, or did you like? I know I started with Rhodia and Clairefontaine, and then progressed once I realized there was a whole nother world of paper.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go and stick my neck out here and tell you that I'm a big fan of the Hewlett Packard 32-pound paper. Uh, I buy 500 sheets for about $20 delivered, and that's what I write all my thank you notes. All the pens that I make come with a thank you note and a wax seal, and the stickers are all embedded. And it's just great because I also have a couple of friends that I'm pen pals with, and I can write with any size nib, even the Monty Winfield traditional Fude or his XL Architect. You can write on those, and they're not bleeding through. Um, so big fan of the HP 32. I know it's not what the trendy people are expecting to say, but it's functional. It's super functional.
So I know there's one of my local pen club people who listens to the show, and he's gonna. This is some validation because we were at pen club one day, and I was like, "Listen, if you're making your own notebooks, go pick up a ream of the HP 32-pound paper." Because back when I got into it, and I vended one year making leather and
Yeah.
notebook covers and whatnot. But that's what I made the inserts out of, the HP 32 pound with the deep stapler. And that paper, for what it is and the accessibility, well, at least it used to be, because now it's, he had to order it online because you couldn't find it at a local
Yeah.
office supply store. But that paper is a great performer, especially cost per sheet. It's kind of hard to beat. And like you said, it's got multi-use because it is US letter size. You can cut it down to a smaller size if needed, or fold it, letter lock it and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely kind of a hidden gem that once you've used it and then you're like, okay, I'll keep a ream of that around because it's a
Yeah.
good, scratch paper if nothing else.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna learn Spencerian or you're gonna learn copperplate, or in my case, you got to learn hiragana and katakana and kanji, you're gonna be practicing and burning through stuff. And but for copperplate and Spencerian, where you really want to try your tools and you don't want them bleeding through, the HP 32 is a great compromise for, getting your practice in, getting to use your inks and your various nibs, and you still got that nice performance that you want so that you can practice properly, but you're not burning through, the like some of the Japanese paper, I forget, the ream is really tiny and it's $20 in Japan. It's $20 in Japan, right? God knows how much it is here. It's like none of us have that level of cash to burn. Like if you're going to use that paper, you're writing somebody something special, right? But for practicing, HP 32 all the way.
No, definitely. We'll have to start the HP 32 fan club, um, fountain pen fan club for the HP 32. On to the favorite question that I ask, because it's always got a great answer. What is your favorite stationery adjacent item? And by that, I mean a case, a bag, a book weight, a lap desk, something that is not pen, ink, or paper that you use all the time and is kind of an indispensable part of your setup.
Yeah, so man, I got a few of them. And unfortunately this is a slight plug for my mom. My mom, Stacey's Pen Rolls, makes these pen rolls. We cut them. I had her custom make them to fit maker size pens, right? And so here is a pen roll with 6 maker pens, and I can fit 4 of these guys easily in my purse. I have a traveling purse that I carry with me. Usually at pen shows, you'll see me slung with it. I can fit 4 of these, so I'm carrying 24 pins with me. Like this is also what I use every day. I've been carrying this since COVID. So mom made this back in 2022. So I've been carrying this with me every day for 4 years, and it's got my stash. It's got my stash that I'm rolling with right now, and it fits everything, and it also gets tossed in my backpack. So it takes quite a beating. So pen rolls, I'm a big fan of. The other thing is trays. Uh, if you've seen Luke's setup, you've seen his pen tray. Uh, Here's one in action right now. It's got a bunch of stuff loaded on it. Um, they're great because usually I'm working on stuff, right? Testing nibs, fitting pens, double checking everything under a 10x magnifying glass to make sure it meets quality control. And so I use pen trays all the time. I also have, I'm going to butcher the Toyoko Craft case or box. Sorry, I have a Toyoko Craft
Gotcha.
box. I want to say it's the 60 up, and it's in the Hanoki blue.
I like that blue.
Um,
That's a great color.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's awesome. Highly recommend it.
No,
I
so
think,
that's great. Storage has always been one of the primary things, be it a rickshaw, a pin roll, a bag, because you have to be able to carry all this stuff around in order to use it. If you don't have it with you, you're not going to use it. So it makes sense, but because one of my favorites is a book weight, because I like hardcover
oh
journals,
yeah.
and to hold the pages down for me to write with my tiny writing, I have to have something to help. Or with the nice papers, I'm going to have so much hand oil on there that, even with a very well behaved pen and ink, it's just going to create a mess that I don't want to deal with.
No, I hear you. And especially if you're doing wax seals, you need kind of 2 weights to hold the paper down when it's folded over. And I
Yeah.
cheat. My wife, well, actually they're mine. I've been gifted some giant candles in glass jars, and I just use those as weights. Uh, and then I stash them, on the shelves, and they just look like they're normal decoration, but they have function to them.
Surprised you haven't designed some sort of 3D printed thing with a circle in the middle where you can just kind of ratchet the bottom up for when you're doing the wax seal. So it's got a perfect spot in the middle and it holds the paper flat. Maybe that'll be something you'll scribble down and it'll come to be at some point, because that would be a very practical little, specific use gadget that I think would be, great to kind of have like, well, look at this. It'll hold the wax seal perfectly.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I apologize right now to some of my clients. Some of them get phenomenally, relatively circular wax seals. The octopus is dead center. If you're the first thank you note that I've written in a while, things they start going sideways and it's not a symmetric pattern. It's definitely, got way too much wax on one side. And sometimes I barely am able to encapsulate the wax seal. I'm it's definitely a work in progress.
No, wax seals can be great until they're not, and then they can just be a frustration because you want it to be perfect, and then you like miss one part, like it didn't quite settle or it'll pull up. There's always something with wax seals that's going to come into like for some reason today it needs one extra pellet of wax versus last time it needed three. Today it needs four, and there's no explanation why.
So I normally do about 5 to 10 thank yous at a time, and I have two hot glue guns, and I have the wax seal rods loaded into those, and so I'm able to move from letter to letter to letter. The difficulty though is I want to say the brass seal itself, it needs like heat fins to dissipate the heat. So after I've done like two or three, I can't keep going because the brass is too
Yeah,
hot, and I got to set it down on like some cold granite and let it kind of cool down before I commence.
no,
But
definitely.
but yeah, the glue gun is, if you ever get into doing a lot of them, the glue gun's where it's at, but it's not as artistic as some of the other people where I see like they're using one palette and filling it in strategically, right? And then they're
Yep.
layering it so they get like they just I forget. I follow like two or three people who do phenomenal wax seals. I think, have you seen any of these videos, Derek? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. Like, there's some people who have like a crest and they're like putting each quadrant of the crest or the coat of arms with a different color. And then they use
Yeah.
that is not my style. The closest you're going to get to that is mixing a couple of pellets of different colors together to see what ends up. And it's either going to be great or, it's the thought that counts. That's my view
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
So let's get into Rob's Penworks. When did you said kind of how long you've been in the hobby, but when did you truly, after you bought your lathe, when did you get into really making pens with take it to the next level, let's say?
Yeah, it took about 4 months. Um, or 5 months. It took 5 months. So by October, I had purchased my triple start tap and die and was using ebonite to make my first pen, which is somewhere here. It is. Here's the second pen I made um, out of ebonite, and the first one I made is my Harry Potter platform 9 3/4 because it's got a finial that says 9 3/4 and it's got a lightning bolt as a roll stop made out of ebonite. So this kind of was my first pen, which is hilarious, right? Like for those of you that know me, I'm showing you a black ebonite pen, which is like not what I'm known for at all, right? But yeah, I bought the Pen Turner's Bible, and in the Pen Turner's Bible, it talks about kitless pens and how you can go about making them. And I was also a member of the International Association of Pen Turners, and there was a few articles in there on how to go about making pens and how to source stuff. And now 10 years have gone by. I've done three group buys for triple start tap and dies with the community, and yeah, time flies.
No, and I think there is if you're wanting to get into it now, it's a pretty low barrier to entry. You can get less expensive lays, but learning the stuff to buy once at the beginning so you're not buying it multiple times, that's the trick that I've already experienced. And I've got some extra tooling now that'll never get used again because, after that point hits, you want to get the stuff that makes your life easier.
Yeah, 100%. I turn on a 175-pound lathe, maybe 200 pounds because I have the bed extension. I have the PM 2014, right? And that's heavy. That's heavy for somebody who's just turning pens. That mass helps dampen vibration and just ensures things are square and the way they're supposed to be. And I'm talking, that's the wood lathe that I do all the organic shaping on.
Gotcha. So how long were you into the pin side before you're like, I want to make my own blanks. So when I'm making pins out of material that I've made as well.
Yeah, so about 6 months in, I discovered you can work with people who are casting and order materials. And so, actually, that's not true. It was a lot sooner than that. James of the Pinsmiths and I kind of started around the same time. And so uh, I discovered I could just message James and say, "Hey, can you send me something awesome?" And dealer's choice, whatever you got, just send me something that's cool and send me 10 something that's cool blanks. And so that's what he would do. This is before James had a website. Like, I mean, most people know who the Pensmiths are. They know they have a beautiful website. They know they've been up and running forever. Yeah. So James and I used to have conversations about should he start a website or not. I'm like, dude, I think you have the skill. Like, you should do it. Definitely. Love your work. Um, and it got to a point though where it was difficult because I had a lot of people at work. I worked at a company that had at the time 400 to 600 people constantly around me, and they all discovered I made custom stuff, right, on the lathe. And so they would come by and they're like, I need pink, green, yellow, or I need blue and red. I need this, I need that. And it became very cumbersome to try to order stuff and have it shipped. And then shipping was always a factor. So I spoke to James and he's like, dude, you just really need to start casting yourself. So in 2018, I bought all the equipment and started casting myself. And then in 2020, Midwest Hybrids took me under their wing and taught me how to do glitter, taught me how to make all my molds from scratch. So I make a huge percentage of the molds I use are made from scratch. I only own like 2 molds that are purchased from the store. The other like 20 are all made in house. Yeah, and so now, I cast like this is a typical casting, right, with the glitter. Or here's one of the crazier ones. Um, and these are all made with in-house molds, and it's done. You don't cast once, you cast twice. Once for the opaque and then once for the glitter, and that's how we get this awesome, very distinctive, organic, faux burl shape in the middle of the
No, that's
rod.
really neat. I've just been seeing pictures because I've not seen one in person yet, but the pictures of the burl mixed in with the acrylic, it's just a unique look
Yeah,
that, it catches your eye that's one of those things if you're walking through a pin show, you're gonna stop and be like, "I need to at least pick that up and look at it to see,
thank you.
how that looks."
Yeah, so the whole goal is the faux burl. Like that's the thing, right? And so like here's the glow series. So these are glows yellow, glows orange, uh, and I got a bunch of other ones, but I can't hold them all at the same time. So,
Yeah.
but it's all about that faux burl. And in this case, you got to cast your own. I can't buy these, right? And people have asked me, so are you going to sell them? And here's the thing: once you put it out there and you start selling it, then people will say, "Oh, it's commercially available. I can make my own." And so I have purposely not sold any of these faux barrel blanks. Most people who do have a faux barrel or two, like Tim Hooligan, um, he's a great mentor and friend. Um, I sent him over some of my blanks to make his version of Winter last year, and then he engraved a bunch of stuff. And he's teaching me how to engrave, and I designed and made his nib slitter so that he can make all his nibs from scratch.
No, and
So
that's
it's a
a
little give and
perfect
take.
yeah. Well, no, that's a perfect summation of just pen makers in general. People have their specialty and they help other people out. And we have another question that I'm just going to go and skip to that one and I'll come back to the other one. Because talking about helping other pen makers where, your day job you have the expertise of being able to help design and do the digital art to make 3D prints or, castings and things like that. So just talk about how that kind of came to be, how you kind of got into that helping the other pen makers out, but oh, I can help you design that. Send me a rough design of what you're looking for and let's see what we can come up with. Just kind of talk through that because I know that there's a bunch of makers who've benefited from your help and assistance in that way, much like me, just with, hey, oh, look at this equipment, use this, try this. Oh, I think this is what's going wrong when I'm asking a question of why is this, off center. So talk about just how you've helped from the CAD or modeling aspect for the other makers.
Yeah, so there's been a handful of people who I know who've reached out. who have very specific things in mind, very, very strong visionary uh, concepts, but they're concepts, right? They can tell you with explicit detail how big, how thin, um, but they're not sure how to make it real, right? And Luke, so we held this up earlier, so I'll explain it, right? So Luke wanted a roll stop, and he wanted it to look a very specific way, right? So it's kind of this half moon cutout, and he wanted it to have a specific counterbore so that they could do their florals inside the roll stop. And I'm like, send me a sketch, right? And so he sketches it out and he sends it over to me. And like 5 minutes later, I send him back his sketch, but in 3D. And he's like, how the heck did you do that? I'm like, dude, I mean, essentially it's my first language at this point. I've been doing CAD since I was 12 years old. I went to a magnet school in LA for architecture. I learned how to do CAD for architecture at the age of 12. And it just has evolved from there and gotten more and more um, in depth, right? There was one point where I was doing 40 to 60 hours of CAD a week for both my full-time job and while I was going to grad school. And for grad school, I was designing robots. I'd CAD at work for 40 hours and come home and do CAD again for another 20 hours. So I was doing CAD for 60 hours. And then as we were talking about earlier, I taught it at the university for 5 years. If for some of my friends that have uh, a good idea of what they want, I'm able to bring that to life. Tim, on the other hand, love you, Tim, love you. But man, he shows up with a napkin sketch, right? A napkin sketch of a nib slitter. And, it was kind of showing me what it needed to do. But one napkin sketch turned into like 20 different drawings, if not more, for each of the individual parts that had to be designed and manufactured. But now, he's able to use an off-the-shelf $1 disc that he can buy in bulk, and he's able to cut these nibs, as opposed to back before that, he had like the $60 or $100 blade, and if he broke that, he was screwed. This thing, if he can do like 5 or 6 nibs, and then that's it, the blade's done. It's buck, and he did 6 nibs. He's good. He's got his money's worth. He's
Yeah.
happy. So yeah, sometimes it's just right fit for the project. There's some projects I won't be able to do. There's not enough there. Um, the person's not able to convey really what they want. Others are able to convey exactly what they want. Like Luke sends me hand sketches with angles and dimensions, and I'm like, okay, is it millimeters or inches? And once I know what it is, then it's relatively quick to pump out.
You need to make a Rob's banana for scale so they can hold it and draw in next to Rob's banana for scale. So then okay, it needs to be half a banana and that's going to be 1.5 inches or whatever. Just, I think that would be a funny little gimmick to have. And for those of you who don't know, when Rob is saying Luke, he's talking about Papa J Studios, who does the florals and finials. And we'll put a link to both him and Hooligan in the notes. So definitely check that out. Both of them making some very cool pins and engravings and stuff. So in terms of other things, though, one thing that I think I first saw before I'd ever talked to you or anything was your X-acto handles or your
Oh yeah.
Tombow holders and stuff like that. So when did you take the lathe hobby into the other stuff? Was that when your coworkers were like, hey, can you make something that also does this that's kind of like a pen, but not? Just talk about that, because I love that like the pencils, the multi-use things like that.
Yeah, so here's a x-acto, right? It's made just like a fountain pen. So this comes off and you can swap it out and put a fountain pen section on it. I actually came up with this design, believe it or not, in 2005. I'm walking from the lab back to my cube at work, and I had taken a stock X-acto with its clip-on plastic and put it in my pocket. And as I'm walking through the hallway, I look down and there's a blade sticking through my khakis. Uh, and I looked at that and I'm like, well, that's not going to freaking work. Like I need to make something where you can thread on and put a cap on. So I told you about, the first pen I made, but shortly after making that first pen, I made my first X-acto, and I ended up making more X-actos than I did fountain pens. I probably made about 80 X-actos, and I'd only made like 10 fountain pens at the time. Back if we look at 2020. And during COVID, I made every one of my team members, there was 30 of them at the time. I made every single one of them an x-acto with a threaded cap so that they can run around from their office cube to the lab and there's no safety issue. Today though, since they get free stuff, this is what they get now. They get the Penn State Industries x-acto um, because it's so much less work. And somebody was telling me they're like, "Oh, you copied Penn State." I'm like, "Bro, I've been making X-actos for 10 years. Penn State came out just after COVID." But I love I love a lot of the kits that they make, and the X-acto is amazing. Um, the other thing, so we talked about X-actos. Let's talk about the pencils, right? So I've been making the pencils since day one. Um, Basically, I bought the Pen Turner's Bible in May, end of May. So by June, I discovered, hey, you can make pencils. And so I ordered everything that I needed and I started making pencils. They're my own slightly tweaked design. The wall's a little bit thicker and it's a little more rounded. And that allows for greater strength so that if it's tossed in your bag or your purse or your backpack, it'll take more of a beating than the original design. The original design has a significantly thicker wall or significantly thinner wall. Yeah. So love making the pencils. I've made a lot of these as well over the years. And then recently been making nib holders using the faux burl, right? I also make a capped version of the nib holder, and those have been on the 13 millimeter platform, and some of the ladies have asked me for a thinner one. So this is an example of a 12 millimeter threaded nib holder. Still needs to be shaped and sanded and polished. Yeah. Like here's the thing, man. Let's just call a spade a spade. I think when I was a kid, it was called ADD. I think it's now called ADHD. I forget what it's called. They keep changing the names, right? I'm all over the place, and it's just a fact. So I like making stuff and I like changing it up. Like don't get me wrong, like I love making fountain pens, right? Like here's like a stash of the commissions that are currently underway, and you know here's another stash of work in progress. But it's always fun to make something new and challenge your brain and challenge your skills. I think that's why I get along so well with people who like to make stuff, because kind of like birds of a feather flock together.
No, and I fully get that because I like to tinker. I like to make stuff, and I used to do like costumes and props, like conventions and stuff like that. And
That's
I'd be
awesome.
making all sorts of random stuff out of like, oh, you need a Mandalorian armor? Go buy a trash can and a heat gun, and doing
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And then I had a gap, and I think that's why I took to pen making like I did, because I was doing something less screens, more analog. At the end of the workday, I work in IT. The last thing I want to do is look at another
Yeah.
screen. So going into the garage, now my garage that looks like a shop, it's just a whole different vibe. You put some music on, make some things that turn out great. You make some things that turn into just constant frustration, but that's part of the game. You rarely ever make the same mistake twice. If you're paying attention, you take notes. And I like that, because you're not wrong that if you do something as a hobby too much, it's easy to burn out on it. And that's why you have to do that variety of
Hmm.
trying new things, or, trying different materials, or, making something that even if it ends up in failure, you're going to pick up something on that that'll help you when you're doing the next thing. So I very much understand that, internal polishing. I never would have guessed that it's kind of relaxing. I'm sitting there just doing it, just listening to music, going through all the different papers and whatnot. But I find that relaxing. It's, even though it's highly repetitive, it's like a cool kind of Zen state where you just kind of get into the flow and you're just, going through. So I
Yeah.
fully get that.
So I either have an audiobook going or a podcast, like gourmet pens. I made so many pens to the gourmet pens podcast. It's hilarious. I had to make a pen for Aziza, and I'm like, I need to listen to her show while I get this baby going, right? So I'm making her pen to her own podcast. But the other thing that I'll do is I will stream anime on my phone, or I'll get a little bold and I'll bring in the iPad and I'll set up the iPad so I can see it while I'm internally polishing. But there's always ends up being a white stripe running right down the middle of the iPad from the lathe spinning, right? And I'm like, it's just part of it. But yeah, so I highly recommend audiobooks, or potentially streaming Netflix or whatever your streaming subscription of choice is while you're doing polishing.
No, and that's where for me, audiobooks, I read fast when I'm reading and they go too slow and I'll stop paying attention to what I'm doing and I'll get like caught up into listening. So I would have to do like I have a TV in my office and I play the same TV shows or movies just because I know what's in them. I can
Okay.
see it out of the corner of my eye. It's, and there was something, an article a while back about like comfort movies, like people who watch the same things over and over. It's like makes your brain kind of chill. You've got that constant attention, it's grabbing at you, but it calms you down and keeps you focused. And I fully relate to that.
Yeah.
So that kind of ties in with the next question I had, though. In what ways have you found balancing your day job with the pen making? Because they're very different, but also, there's some similar aspects. And, I guess you're saying trying out new things, trying variety, not letting it be such a routine. But how does that work in with the day job where you, is that a way you escape when you're at the lathe, or how have you found that combination of time?
Yeah, so I'll overshare or share a little bit more about my day job so that it makes a little more sense. At work, I manage a group of people, and I'm usually called in whenever something's going sideways and I have to figure out how to prevent it from going sideways. And so I don't get to design anymore, really. I don't get to tinker and play like I used to. When I was younger, earlier on in my career, my boss would come up and stand behind me and do voice command CAD. All the younger generations like, oh yeah, you can tell AI what to do. I was like, yeah, we didn't have AI when I was a kid. I was the AI, right? So my boss would be, make it this. Now make it this. Now add a radius. No. We should do a chamfer. Let's add a chamfer. Make it skinnier. It doesn't look good. Make it look better. Come on, make it look better, right? And that was fun. We'll go with fun, right? And so now, I guess in a way, I'm that guy, right? I'll walk around and uh, provide constructive criticism or insight or knowledge or whatnot. And so I don't get to really play with my hands anymore. So doing Rob's Penworks as a passion project is all about staying in touch with my ability to design and create things from scratch. My roommate back in the day will tell you I was definitely not an artist. He was the artist, right? You'd come into a room and he'd be God knows what he'd be doing, right? He'd either have paintbrushes in his fro and he'd be painting and sticking them in his fro, painting, sticking them in his fro, or he'd be manufacturing, something out of metal and other things that he found. And I never knew what I was going to walk into, right? But I wasn't making anything. I had my own engineering homework and that's about it. But, fast forward now, and he'd probably get a kick out of all the stuff that I have going on in the garage. But back to your fundamental question. So I wake up every day at 5, 7 days a week. I'm up at 5. I'm working in the garage, trying to get stuff done before I go to work. And then on the weekends, on Saturday and Sunday, I'm up early. I'm in the garage trying to make things happen. And that's kind of how I balance when I do things, and also from a mental or from the heart. I'm balancing what I like to do, because work and this passion project are completely polar opposite, and they kind of help level out the scales.
No, and as I've gotten into it, I'm like in the weekends, unless we have some sort of pin club or something else, I'll be working on pins. And then weeknights, I might do 2 nights, and then I do a stream on a night. And then the other night, I don't want to do it at all because I don't want to burn out. So that's when I'll like get caught up on journaling or play with one of the typewriters or something that is not related to pin making, just to be sure I'm forcing myself to not burn out, because I know myself, and when I get into a hobby, it's all in, but that can have its breaking point of all in and then nope, I'm good. I don't need to do that anymore. So,
I totally hear you, and I think we've discussed a little bit about it, privately. I'm required now to learn Japanese, and that's like my third thing, right? So you have pen making, you have work, and you have the typewriters and your podcast. And so I essentially have work, pen making, and then learning Japanese. And that's been a big lift, right? I'm 5 months in right now, 5.5 months in, and can create sentences. I can read some stuff, but I watch anime a lot. My wife and I will watch anime together, and we're watching it in Japanese with English subtitles. And sometimes I pick up new words, and I'm excited. Like I learned the word very. My teacher taught me the word very the other day. We worked it into a sentence, and I'm like, I've heard this before. All of a sudden, my character is just like using it all over the place in every episode, and I'm like, oh, I was wondering what that meant. Okay, here we go. Um, so, anyways, I digress. Back to you, Derek.
No, that makes perfect sense. And because that ties in actually well with the next question I had written down. Because of your learning Japanese for work and your day job, that has you traveling there, as we already talked about a little bit. But what's one of your favorite stationery finds that you've found, like in whatever shop in Japan through your various travels? What's one of your favorite things, or even if it's a couple that you've found and brought back that you weren't looking for, but it was a happy accident to discover in a store that now you're like, I love it so much, I must use this all the time, or stuff like that?
Yeah. So let me grab them. So the first is the Tombow erasers, right? So this is the one that I sleeve. This is great for when you've written something and then in pencil and then you write over it in ink and you need to just get rid of all that. But for kanji, I picked up this little sucker and it's a 2.3 millimeter and it's supported. So I'm able to get in there and erase like really fine small areas without taking out like my entire kanji and redo the part that I ruined. The other find, and I know for those of you that are like in the hobby, you're like, that's not a big deal. But to me it was. I actually got a Kuratoga medal. Um, and I was using this nonstop. I also picked up a Kuratoga with Kiki's mail service on it and a 0.3 millimeter for my wife's coworker. Her apprentice her and I both love Kiki's mail service. And I found in a stationery store a Kuratoga that was branded with Kiki's mail service. And I'm like, done. Like, we're getting that for her. All right. I'm gonna break this out and please don't hate me too much. I was able to get a Kuratoga dive, and I do use this a lot for writing in kanji. You can adjust this clutch mechanism or drive mechanism here for after how many strokes does it, or how fast it auto loads the lead. Um, and is it worth the hype? I'm not disappointed. But for my bigger hands, I like the larger barrel. I love the metal, but the barrel's just too small. Like when I have 2 hour sessions of practicing kanji, this skinny barrel is killing me. Whereas this guy has a much larger barrel, and I'm able to go for like 3 or 4 hours, and it's not a big deal. So it is being used, and it's being used for kanji.
Hey,
Yeah. So
that's his
those are
design. It's
Japan
meant to
finds.
be written with. So if it works for you, and that's the nice thing with this hobby, especially like in terms of making pins. As
Yeah.
I said to someone before, you might walk up to a table and be thinking to yourself, that's the worst looking pin I've ever seen. And then the next person walks up, that is the best looking pin I've ever seen. We each have our own preferences. Like I've been using a lot of the Spoke design pencils, and I love the 10.5 extra knurled Model 7s and 8s. I've got 4 Model 7s here in the 3, 5, 7, and 9 millimeter. Yeah. And because I write really small, I grip tight. So the larger pins makes me not grip as tight. So we all have our preferences, and that's the great thing. Somebody's made it. And if not, you reach out to a maker and say, hey, can you make something like this that's fatter or thinner or whatnot? Like people asking you about a smaller nib holder because they probably have smaller hands and they want to be able to write where it's not such a chore. So that's
Yeah.
the great thing with this hobby. There's so many options.
So I'm going to take this apart real quick, right? Because I don't care if somebody does it because I don't have the equipment to do it. So the threads on this bad boy are the same. So it's female threads, they're the same. And so, we have friends with CNCs. I think I might hit them up to see, can we match this thread and can they make me some test barrels that I can turn and make a fatter grip for this Kuratoga metal, but jazz it up a little and something awesome. Maybe some dragon scale or something, uh, some Juma dragon scale, or who knows, maybe some faux abalone. I don't know, but that's like something that as makers we can jazz up some of the things that we find. Speaking about you know how Spoke Designs made some amazing pencils, right? Yeah, and I just discovered they have a fatter version, and I'm like, oh, I just bought this one. I might have to buy another one. So
So I have the 10.5 millimeter and the 9 millimeter with the knurls. I have two Model 8s in the larger size. I've got four Model 7s, both pins. I'm big fan of the Spoke Design stuff, but as I've gotten into pencils, I was like, I need all the pencils. So I bought a bunch of lead holders, all the pencils,
yeah.
and I'm using most all of them in some way. Some have become my garage shop pencils. Some
Mhm.
are the at the desk pencils. Like those all have the little stands. So they all are standing upright like this in a row with the 3, 7, 5, 7, and 9 because I had three of them. I was like, well, I might as well get a 0.5 millimeter to fit the set, you know?
Okay, so remind me later to send you the link to the Rockler cord management magnets, and they also double as a marker or a pencil or a pen holder. And so I have like 6 or 9. I think they come in packs of 3. So I think I bought 3 packs, and I have them like loaded all over the place in the
Nice.
garage. Highly recommend those because you can get them up and away, right? So if you're in a spot that's a little more lively, you can put your stuff further away, and it's always there to grab.
I'm lucky that my garage walls are all pegboard. That was something that when we bought the house, all the garage covers, like so behind my lathe is all pegboard. And then,
Oh well,
I have a magnetic toolbox. So I'm using magnets for the aprons and stuff like that. So you kind of find those, the way to keep stuff organized and because that's one thing I learned when, working with Nick Pasquale. Put labels on things, keep it organized, and it's easier to make things reproducible. I don't
yeah,
want happy accidents. I want repeatable successes. And,
yeah.
that's where finding the right equipment and whatnot and getting the benefit of learning from those who've already done it and done the legwork and found the right tools has been very helpful. So you just went to California Pen Show. Are you going
Mhm.
to any other shows this year, either as a vendor or a attendee?
Right now, it looks like it's a hard no. I have got 3 trips to Japan this year. 2 are locked in, and one is floating, and it's really up to the FDA on when that trip's going to be. It's out of my hands, and odds are. So last time they picked Comic Con. So I was supposed to be at Comic Con. I had tickets for 3 days, and my other engineer had tickets for, I want to say all 5 or 6 days, the entire thing, the pre and the post, everything, special hotel booked, everything. And I asked her, I'm like, how much are you in? She's like, I'm in about 2,200 at least, maybe 2,500. I'm like, okay, I'm in 255. So let me go talk to finance. And I'm like, which one do you want to pay back? And they're like, we'll pay back the 255. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going. So I lost out on going to Comic Con. But anyways, back to the shows. Yeah. So I have 3 trips, and I don't know when one of them is, and it's going to collide with shows, usually SF. So I'm going to have to bow out this year.
Yeah, but you already said your translators are, getting you lined up to visit stationery shops. You'll just have to do
Yeah.
your own miniature pin show of finding some other unique tidbits. Maybe you'll find another anime pencil or something like that, and that'll be your takeaway from Rob's pin show as he travels.
Yeah, there's the Evangelion fountain pen that Pensloth has, right? And that's from Japan, and that's kind of wild. I don't know if I'd get that, but I'm trying to search for one of our there's a stationery shop that's at Hakata Station in Fukuoka, and they have an Instagram, and I chat with them every now and then. They like know me now because I go in every time I go in, and they keep posting stuff, and I'm able to respond now in Japanese. And I had said something was super cute, and the response back was, "Well, hopefully you can pick it up when you swing by for your work trick next time." And I said, "Yeah, I'll see you in May." And she's like, "Okay, we'll see you in May. Make sure to stop by." So yeah, I'm excited to see because you were asking about like cool finds. The the store at Hakata Station has really kawaii stuff, very cute stuff that you're not really going to find here, and it's very functional. So I'll take some photos and some videos and send them over to you so you get the vibe.
No, definitely. Maybe you'll find the elusive Zento signature at one of the
That's all
shops
on
or
the
something
list.
like that. Yep. This one I looked into when Yoseka had gotten some in. I happened to be at my computer when the email popped up of, hey, we have some in stock. And, who knew? I mean, it's a great writer, but the aftermarket, I don't think I would want to pay the aftermarket prices for it. But hopefully those will get more in the wild soon because it is a great little pen and the best fidget pen with the magnet, you know, that you could ever hope for.
Yeah,
So
the
that
dive's
as
got the
yeah,
magnet.
yeah, the magnets are like the diamond or the not the diamond, the Diplomat Viper. I love the magnetic cap on
Yeah.
that. But we're down to the last question that I kind of ask everybody. So what's
Mhm.
next for Rob's Penworks?
Next is probably winding down commissions, and focusing more on the random artistic stuff that pops in my head. And I hate using the word artistic. You know, a lot of the makers you talk to, you know, have a hard time calling themselves artists. Some of them use the word really freely. Um, I'm a little more shy about using it. But I have a bunch of stuff that I want to make. Like we talked about the x-actos a little bit. I have another design using a Japanese gripping mechanism that's safer to use that I prototyped, but it needs a metal part because there's a part that would wear if it doesn't have it, and I want to spend some time figuring that out. I also want to get into making inky. Oh, I'm gonna screw this up. CY CY and Jacob both told me how to say them, but I'm gonna butcher it. So basically, they're a fountain pen that's eyedropper, but it's got a piston inside, and so when it's in the closed state, the piston shuts off ink flow. And
So like
the
an Opus
benefit to
88, like a Japanese
yes,
eyedropper style?
yes, but it's called inky something, and I always forget. It's not Domo. It's something else, and I really like those for travel. I have like 5 Opus 88s that I take with me and CY's pens because they have that safety function as well. So I have about 8 pens that I can take with me when I travel, and they can be inked, and they they are fine on the plane because the piston shuts off the ink flow. So I'd like to get into that, but I also have some new pencil designs that I want to get to and some new nib holder designs that I want to get to. Um, but they're going to take time. I've had special tooling already made to put on the lathe so I can do what I want to do, but it takes time to set up and prototype, and I need to get through commissions first to make that happen. And there's also my Urushi. I want to get back to doing Urushi in a very specific niche that I don't want to disclose yet.
No.
But you can hit me up afterwards, and I'll tell you in confidence.
No, and I think that is a common theme I've seen of some other makers, especially ones who've been doing it a while, getting away from commissions and just making what you want to make. And there's going to be a market for it, because then you get to be, because artist and artisan are very similar words if you think of it, because some people might not want to call themselves an artist, but they're still an artisan if they're making custom things. So I think that allows, like we were talking about earlier, you're not going to get bored if you're making the same commissioned pin, over and over. Your customers would still be happy when they have a surprise. They don't know what to expect. Hey, I'm doing a drop at 12 o'clock on Thursday. And then those pins are going to sell because you already have a name. People like your style, they like the materials. And I like that kind of batch release. And that seems to be becoming more commonplace. And that helps the makers and the consumers because you have a better chance of getting something and not being on a couple year waiting list or things like
Yeah.
that. You have to strike while the iron's hot if you're really wanting to get something from Rob's Penworks or whomever. So I like that method. And, as I'm getting to the point of when I eventually want to start selling something, I'm going to adopt that, just seeing how, if that's where makers are going, that's going to make me appreciate that more because I don't want to get into a long commission list because what if I don't like making that same style of pin again? And, when I get to it, it has a different, keeps things fresh because so you can
Yeah.
experiment and, find something new and then it will find someone who wants it. Like we are saying, that might be for me, I might not like the pen I make and someone else might look at it and go, oh, I love that. I must have that. Take my money. So
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I'm going on 10 years of commissions, and it's been amazing, but it can also be stressful. I mean, if you Google, right, Rob's Penworks, the first thing that pops up is there's a long wait. And it's like, yeah, the pens take 12 to 16 hours each to make. I'm trying to figure out ways to make them faster and investing in more expensive stuff to try to do it. But in the end, you still got to internally and externally polish glitter, which loves to pop free. So it's always a roll of the dice. Is it going to be an 8 hour? Is it going to be a 10 hour? Is it going to be a 16 hour? I mean, there's been a pen that I finished 8 times. 8 times. 8 times. So
Oh, and that's my fear of I have a couple people who have asked about commissions. I was like, I will do it because that's part of the pin making and learning process. My fear though is when I have one stick of material that they want it made out of, is that going to be one of the ones where something goes cattywampus and things are out of alignment? And that's where my brain is like, okay, get everything worked out, make one where everything is perfect, and then just before I do anything else, put the good material in and reproduce the same thing. And that's that's where I'm at now. Before I have the commission, before that material touches the lathe, it's going to be make one or two pins right before it, where everything is as it should be before the hero material, you might say, goes in for
Yeah.
its turn at the lathe.
And highly recommend having a lathe book. We joke about amongst the casters about, did you write it down? Did you write the recipe down? Maybe, and it's always like the one that comes out amazing. How did I do it? How did I do it? You can't remember, right? So same thing with the lathe is, jot down your settings, jot down your speeds, jot down your final dimensions that worked, so that if you go to reproduce it, you have all the info that you need. And that's probably the biggest advice I could give to a new turner is keep a logbook of what you're making and how you made it, so that you can reproduce it or learn from it.
No, I actually am using a Grafilo A5 in a TGS Rotorfaden Slim that I literally have an index of every pin I've made, what material is, who bought it, and I have common measurements of pins that I like that I've made or made with someone like Jim
Mhm.
Hines or Nick Pasquale. It's like, oh wait, I like the taper on that one. So the fat end is this, the thin end is this. So then I have a starting point to, find my own design because I'm just using files and free shaping on the wood lathe when I get to that point. But at least I have a guideline of I want it to end up close to this or this shape or this thing. So definitely that's another reason. That's why I have my shop pencils, because everything in there is in pencil because it's an evolving process. As you learn, the process changes, and I want to be able to erase and have like my step by step be accurate to what is current. That gives me the opportunity to adjust that. But Rob, thanks again for taking some time when your busy schedule. I'm sure you'll be heading back to the lathe or to do some Japanese after this, but I do appreciate you taking some time to talk. It's been a great conversation. And definitely, if you're not familiar with Rob, check out all the notes that'll be in the video description for his Instagram, his website, all of the ways to find out when Rob might be releasing a batch of pins or something like that, so that you can take advantage of what he has to offer and the great um, um, pins, x-actos, eraser holders, or whatever else comes out of the mind of Rob as he has a chance to develop the new products that will be coming at some point once time and quality assurance allows. So thanks again. And if you're new to the channel, or if you're new to the show, you can check the video version out on YouTube, which will be for this one especially great because Rob did hold up a bunch of things. If not, the audio version is available on Apple Podcast and Spotify, and I'm working on getting it added to some other podcast carriers as well. So Rob, any last words before we sign off?
No, it's been awesome, Derek. Thank you for having me. And thank you to everybody who's been a support over the last 10 years. You guys are all amazing.
No, perfect way to end it. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next episode.